Okay, so I wanted to talk about opposites attract. It's an interesting concept, I guess. Um, some people swear by it. I think it's one of those silly things that just gets said. That's like a colloquialism, and people don't really understand it that much when they're thinking about it or supporting it or speaking of its possible benefits or just saying yeah, of course, opposite, like you're trying to validate maybe your choice in doing something that maybe you shouldn't do. So opposites attract. I want to talk about specifically with relationships of different kinds, like friendships and also romantic relationships. Probably more of the latter than the former, but a lot of the things will apply to both. So I can definitely tell you that I don't believe it is this blanket statement opposites attract. Just that's it. Like I said, I think a lot of people say that just to make themselves feel better for pursuing something that they probably shouldn't pursue. I think that compatibility is key. Chemistry is something different. I do want to do a video. I need to double check if I've done a conversation on compatibility and or chemistry before. But I do want to talk about that for sure. And like I said, that goes for friendships too. But there's certain values and standards that you have as a person, and if you sacrifice those to have a relationship with somebody, um, or I mean, that person doesn't have, maybe you don't sacrifice them, but I mean, you spend time with someone who doesn't have some of those values, it might be a problem. It might not be, but it might be. It just depends. And I guess I think that finding a carbon copy of yourself is also really not generally what people with successful relationships have. Just like dating a different just another version of themselves. I obviously think there's a balance, and there's somewhere in the middle there that's probably the healthiest option for most people, not everybody. But I know for myself, what I've found is that yeah, certain opposites won't work for me. They don't. Maybe they attract, but they don't sustain. Let's talk about that. Like maybe you're attracted to someone. Let's use some more colloquialisms and tropes of like, oh, you were raised really like goody two shoes, and you have all these whatever, and you're really attracted to someone who's bad, like the bad boy or the bad girl that doesn't care about the rules and all this other stuff that maybe you, when you were growing up in your adolescence or whatever, you had all these different values and standards that you were taught, and you didn't really stray outside the lines much, and that could be attractive because it's so different and so exciting, right? Meanwhile, you flip it around. I mean, it could be like, man, you have a stable home life, and you have structure and organization, and you're doing so well because of those things that maybe someone who is on the opposite end of things, they would be really attracted to that because that seems like a good thing. So opposites can attract, but can they sustain, right? And that's the thing. I'm not saying that those things couldn't be sustained, because there's a middle ground that probably could be found in those tropes coming together. But I guess I would say that opposites can definitely attract, probably much more frequently than they can be sustained. So um, you can say you can say that people definitely can be attracted to some. Let's say you're really organized and structured and whatever because that's just what you need for your life to whatever, and you can be attracted to someone who's a complete disorganized mess, and you might think it works because you're like, don't see the importance of this in your life as much. You're like, hey, I'm good, this person over here is getting by doing things their own way, and you're attracted to maybe their looseness and free spiritedness, and maybe you think that some of that will rub off on you. And sometimes maybe you find a middle ground and you can both. Sometimes I think that those opposites that attract can sustain, and you both have these different personalities and habits, qualities that end up blending. They end up over, like, how do I explain this? You end up sharing them with the other person. They share some of theirs, you share some of yours, and it could be in a healthy way, and you come together in the middle with a lot of things, and it could be fantastic and great. Um, I think rather than looking at it so plainly as, oh, opposites attract, or they don't attract, or either one is just as bad. Instead of just, I think it's a very surface level way to look at it, right? So I think that I know the way that I've been looking at it for the past, I don't know how many years, is thinking just about the fact that I don't want a carbon copy of myself. I don't want someone who is exactly the same as me. I want someone who will challenge me, and some of the ways that somebody can challenge me is because they're different. And maybe they're different in ways that I seek to be. So, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse that. So anyway, sometimes, let's say someone is more disciplined than I am, and I'm like, I value that. I want to be more disciplined. We're not on the same page with how our self-discipline works, and that's okay. That's like something that I strive for, but I struggle with. So I would like to be with someone who already has that nailed down, because I can learn from them, and they can challenge me, maybe directly or just lead by example, whatever, right? Yeah. So those are the kind of things I look at. I look at, do we have enough of the same values? Some of those values need to be the same. They need to be like, no, I don't want to be with someone who's a racist or sexist or homophobic or just a bigot of any nature or whatever, right? Those are some core values that we need to be on the same page with. And that's the thing. I feel like there's some things that, like, I want somebody with a certain amount of drive in different areas, like, of just self-betterment, right? Someone who's wanting to do the work. It doesn't mean they have to be perfect at it, because I certainly, struggle with that concept a lot. It's why I talk about it so much, and why I value it so much, is I really believe in it, but I struggle with it. So that's one of those things where they could be on the same page as me, or maybe they could have their stuff more together than me. And I believe that works, but I don't believe it would work for me to say, I'm a person who really believes in self-betterment and lifelong learning. Oh, this person doesn't believe in that at all, but hey, opposites attract and it'll work out. And no, that's not a value that, for me, I don't think that would work if I was with someone who didn't have that mindset of wanting to progress and move forward. And a lot of it's one of those things where the idea of it is like, who's going to argue? Who's going to say, I don't really have any ambition at all? No one's going to say that. Everyone wants, I think, like, not everyone, but the vast majority of people would not admit to not having any ambition. You know, it would be just a load of excuses possibly that follow and say, like, yeah, I really want to do this, but. And sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in that rut of being like, I'm not in the career I want because this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, well, so some of it's in my control and some of it's not, and I don't know how much is and how much isn't, and I'm doing what I can, and, you know, whatever. But it's really difficult if that's something that you really value. And one of the reasons I really value it is because I've been with people that have said that they have these strong ambitions and they want to do this and want to do that, or they do this and they do that, and in reality they don't. And you can spend a long time with someone, you know, and you just realize at some point, like, man, like, that is a core problem. Like, that compatibility there isn't a good opposite. Because some of the opposites you have with someone, if you're not on the same page with certain things, you don't have a compatibility. I mean, compatibility doesn't always mean sameness, right? Which I want to get to in a second. But I mean, again, if someone doesn't share a core value of yours, like drive, if I just call it drive, or ambition, or constructive learning, or whatever, growth mindset, if they don't share that with you, I don't think it would work very well. I don't think most people that have that would be content with having a partner or even a very close friend that didn't have that. I think it's a little different because a partner, maybe most people would one day want to live with and call family and be around them a lot. And whereas a friend, I've learned over the course of years and some hard lessons of not being friends with some people anymore that I was friends with for a long time, that, like, we don't have the same core values and our friendships ended. And it was like, man, I had a lot of fun with that person. But at some point, what was important to me as a friend wasn't just having fun. Like, if that person isn't challenging me, if I'm getting sucked into maybe their drama, or I'm just not enjoying myself with them because what I enjoy now is different than what I enjoyed before. Hanging out, sitting around, and you know, I don't know, watching TV or something might have been enjoyable a little bit at one point, but if I want to have conversations that challenge me with people, and I mean, there's a lot of things that I think are fun with friends, right? But you still have to have some certain compatibilities, and like I was saying before, compatibility doesn't mean sameness. Again, to go back, compatibility just means that it works, and sometimes, well, this is a perfect example. If we look at my hands, sorry for people that are listening to the podcast, but if you spread your fingers out and you put them together and you fill the gaps, right? This can fit. There's things that fit, and it doesn't fit when they're all perfectly in line together. It just bumps up. If they're exactly the same, it just bumps up into each other. And I mean, if they were too far apart, I mean, it would just be janky as well, right? Like they don't fit nicely, but something like that kind of fits pretty good. So there's a middle ground. So someone else that can fill in some of your gaps, like someone, if you're in a relationship with them, a romantic relationship, or even a friendship, sometimes, I mean, if you have enough of those core values that are the same, that some principles that you live by, that you feel that you would stick by, if those are the same, and you think that person is a good person by whatever credo you live by, or whatever, right? Like then you can look at these other things where someone can fill in the gaps. And something I've thought about a lot in past relationships is like, let's use my strengths. Like, let's not, let's use your strengths. Let's use my strengths. Like just let me do this thing that I can do for us. Like, if there's something that we're not equal, we are not 100% equal people. Like, I mean, equal in every department. I mean, we could be equal at the end of the day, but I mean, I have some weaknesses that you have a strengths, and vice versa. And it's nothing that, like, we need to come to terms with that, understand that, communicate about that, and realize, like, oh man, like I struggle with doing this thing. And maybe I'm always going to be the 50 to your 80 in that department. Maybe that's always the way it is. Maybe I get better at it over time, but you get better at it too, and you're just always going to be better at doing that task or whatever it is. And we need to figure out a way to work together, right? And again, sometimes it's just amazing that you find someone who has some things that you really lack, and vice versa, and it just fits, and they fill some gaps that you have, and they strengthen you. And that's how I look at good friendships and good relationships. I think there's some core values that they need to be built on that are the same. And then I think that in order to have to me, I mean, you can have acquaintances. I mean, that's where that ends for like an acquaintance sometimes. It's like, oh, we both like this thing, or we both like that thing, that's so cool. And that might be it. Maybe that's like a work friend or something. Like you can talk about some things that you have similar. But what makes somebody a good friend or a good partner or whatever, a healthy relationship that benefits you and enriches your life, I think is when you have compatibility that goes beyond just surface level things that are similar, where you can both fill in some weaknesses that the other person has and help each other up and help each other out, and no one is dragging the other person down. That you both can benefit from the differences in the other person. So that's what I have to say about opposites attract in relationships, and how to think about things in maybe a more well-balanced way. With that, we'll see you on another time.